because I think we've, tried to read it, but some of it sticks and some of it doesn't, and that would be very helpful.
Great. You might see
You're going to throw that one to me. Okay, so it tends to be a long process. The first step is what your vestry is doing now, which is forming teams. And where you used to have sort of one group that did everything, what the church learned is we burned people out, and it wasn't unusual for people to not only quit their local congregation, but like abandon church entirely. So the decision was made amongst my colleagues that we really needed to move to a more spiritual process that also included more people. So we split the tasks down into smaller groups. So you have a visioning team, and they will kick into gear almost immediately, like in June. And throughout the summer, they are going to be gathering information from the congregation and engaging the whole congregation in some way. Bless you all, you go away in the summer, so it's probably going to be an online survey. But they need to gather information. They have to answer 12 essay questions, which are the same 12 essay questions that the clergy answer. So that helps you see, is there alignment there? They also need to help you all define in the vestry, really, where are you going as a congregation? What is God calling you to do in the future? And therefore, what characteristics do you need in a dean? So that's the summer's work. In the fall, your discernment team will kick into gear. That's when clergy will start to apply, because we'll use what the visioning team comes up with and post a job posting. And there are several places where that happens. Clergy will start to apply in September. So September through January-ish, or maybe they will leave it. I have not yet worked with the vestry for them to say how long will the position be posted and open, but however long it is, names will come in. Discernment team will focus on getting candidate list honed down, who best matches what the vestry has established as the criteria and the non-negotiables. So that'll be happening in the fall. They'll be reading tons of resumes, I hope, please God. And speaking of which, if any of you know clergy that you think would be good, encourage them to apply. One of the challenges we have is a really severe clergy shortage. So we all have to recruit like crazy, okay? So if you know somebody, get them to apply. So they will do all of that in the fall. Springtime is when they will begin to get a very short list. Your vestry will define how many candidates they want to have on the final list. And it's usually sort of between 1 and 3. It's not a huge list because you have to bring them here. The finalists come here for a week long usually, or at least multiple days. And they get to spend time in Paris, they get to be around. They meet staff people. They may bump into some of you, but you will just be very kind and gracious and be polite and not pretend you didn't know that they were candidates, even though you'll probably figure it out. But they will basically be only meeting the discernment team and the vestry. Discernment team will make a recommendation to the vestry for however many names you all decide you want. The vestry will make the call. Our hope, our goal, and where we are aiming is for that to happen in about March or April at the latest. That means that your new dean should be in place by next summer. In the midst of that, there's a lot of, the discernment dean does a lot of reference checks. The bishop does some reference checks. I call my counterparts, every diocese has somebody like me. We do a lot of checks to make sure we don't end up bringing someone in here who has some problems. That's really all we're doing, is trying to identify people who may have a problem. But the discernment team hones it down, the vestry elects. Is that clear, Francine?
Relatively, yeah.
Relatively. It's better. Well, just keep asking.
Does anybody
Maybe I can just say one other thing. So about the teams, making sure that's all clear, because
Oh, and I didn't finish that.
that's what I think is really, I'd like to say it's a robust process, to use a little bit of that language. So we have discernment, visioning. Visioning then leads to discernment. The other three teams, though, that I think are really important, there's a communication team to keep everyone informed, so you don't feel like, I don't understand what's going on. So that's something we're going to put a lot of time into, about getting a communication system set up for the parish. And then we'll also have that welcome piece that was just referred to by Linda, in terms of welcoming in throughout and at the very end of the process, also to welcome the new dean. And there's also going to be a prayer team, and that's what you've probably all seen. So that will be also organized to have a continual stream of the prayers that we get through this, both in a timely fashion, inclusive fashion, but with a great result. So it is 5 different teams that we've put together.
And the welcome team in particular doesn't get to quit when the new dean comes, because they have a year-long process where they make sure the dean meets small groups of parishioners, 6 to 8 people, so the new dean gets to know who you are, and that happens during the first year. So it's really a long, basically a 2-year process by the time you get through all of that.
Great. We have a question just right here.
There's one here, and then there's a question way in the back.
Hello. In terms of the characteristics that the vestry is looking for in terms of the candidate for dean, I'm wondering if you could speak to the qualities of social justice and topics like racial reconciliation and all these things. Has the vestry thought about these questions in terms of a prospective dean, or like what does that look like in terms of commitments?
That's the visioning teams.
Yeah. So that's going to be a lot of the visioning team's role, to look at who we are as a cathedral today. Who are the people that come join us both in the pews and also online, because we have an immense community online. Looking at what our future is going to be. We know more or less who we are today, but we need to also plan for the future, because we need to make sure that we shepherd this church into the future, and this community especially. So that's going to be the visioning team's role. As we are looking to form these teams, we had a session on Friday. It was a very prayerful session in which we, in silent, looked at who might be good fits for the various teams. There we were looking for a good mix of people who represent our congregation here, our community online, from an age perspective, from a background perspective, cradle Episcopalians, very new Episcopalians, all across the board. And so we really want to represent who we are, so that we hope that then those teams can also find a dean who will represent who we are and lead us into the future.
I'm sorry, I missed the very beginning of this meeting, and I just had a question. You may have already addressed this issue, because I missed the beginning of when you said there were 5 groups, the different groups. And I just had a question. Will there be some sort of a survey that will be sent out to all pledging members, the way we've done in the past, that can somehow put their input, so that the pledging members can input what is important to them in a new dean, even if clearly, if it's in a survey form, it may not be as extensive as the people who are actually working in the different committees.
So yes, that is the visioning team will have the responsibility to engage as much as broadly in the congregation, and even in your case, the friends and the volunteers. So they probably, I will do a training session with them in June, but my recommendation is going to be that they use a combination of things. So they may do some in-person things on Sundays, but also sending out a survey so that people can give input. You really want to get as much input across the summer from the congregation and from the people who are engaged in the life and ministry of this cathedral. So yes, is the answer. I can't hear that.
So,
Would it extend time, and that I think that gets to the pressure on time. So she's saying, could we extend it?
Okay, so the timing challenge. There are two major conferences, one in September and one in March, which is when clergy apply. So we start from when do we want to have a dean here? We want to have a dean here by next summer, and then you work your way backwards. If we don't get the work done in time for this September's conference, that kicks us over to March, which means the process means the dean won't be here until 2024. And we have an interim whose contract is at the end of August, I think? Yes?
18 months.
18 months. So if you end up adding a bunch of time onto it, then you end up having maybe bring another dean in, or you're without a dean for quite a while. I mean, there are lots of things. So we're working within some real difficult time constraints. And the reality is most clergy don't apply during the summer, so no sense in putting something out there. The minute December rolls around, like the middle of December, clergy are gone because they're focused on Christmas. So you get applications basically from the end of August until maybe through November, realistically. And then it goes dead. You've got a tiny window in January, February. Coming into March is when they really start applying again because of that March conference. And then once Easter comes, they're dead again. That you're not going to get any applications from Easter into about this time or even later. So that's part of what we're working with. If you push back the tasks and extend out the process, it impacts when your dean is going to come. Yeah. Pass her the mic, because I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing, and so I can't hear you.
I guess just the one point that I wanted to make, which I think is very important, because I think it's, from my former point about really sending out a survey or trying to get as many parishioners involved as possible, is that if you do it during the summer, you will not be covering most of the parishioners, is my feeling. So that my question was, will there be time in September, if we want to do for the vision team, to do a more extensive reaching out to the whole congregation and parishioner base? Will there be time for a survey then in September? Because if it's not done, I would say very soon, this summertime is I think we're going to be missing a lot of the regular
Even people answering online things, you're telling me when they disappear,
that is my feeling.
Good.
So I just thought I wanted to.
Yeah, we are hoping, Caroline, to have the teams assembled by the end of May. Then Linda will lead a training for the teams so that the teams could get kicked off and hopefully get a survey out by the end of June. A lot of people
That's
leave
tight.
mid July, so somewhere between end of June, mid July, and then we are a global congregation. We all have email addresses for the most part, so we would ask you to also be attentive to email, because we really do want to push this, particularly because Linda has indicated that there is a clergy shortage. So, unfortunately we have deadlines, and one of those is the fact that Tim, who is fantastic, only wants to be here with us a maximum of 18 months, and that's what his contract is for. So then we would be either leading two searches, an interim dean and a real dean, or we would be trying to line up a lot of temporary preachers to come in and to support Nat as he is then leading the entire congregation.
So I will work with the visioning team. It's really their decision about how to do this. And we may be able to chop it into some pieces and do some now and some later and still get the job posting. My concern is that we get the job posting in by September so that we get those fall applications from clergy, because I think that's the piece that's going to slow us down. But we can still come up with people having a vision about what are we looking for in a dean, because the discernment team isn't going to need that information in September because they won't even have applicants yet. So we can still work into the fall and find a way to incorporate that. And I'll work with the vision team and see what they feel they can do and how to best fit it into your timing, to make sure that the discernment team gets that information when they need it. They won't start doing interviews most likely, I'm going to guess, until late October and November is when I'm expecting them to do interviews. So we've got a couple of months in the fall that we could still get input into them. And the in-person interviews won't be until January, February.
Just one last thing. We all know about the rentrée and the importance to try and make sure that we still find a way to gather that feedback at that point in time. So the point is noted. We are thinking about how to best do that so that it's not, and I think that was pretty solid in the idea that it's not a cutoff, no more input. It is about this idea we want to start as fast as possible and see how far we can get in that, and then have that as a backstop about the rentrée period of September.
Allison?
Hi, excuse me. I had 2 points. One that has nothing to do with this one yet, but I want to just, I'm listening to the discussion. Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Yes.
I
You
didn't
gotta put it
mic
right
in my
where your
hand. In listening to the discussion about this, is there a possibility that perhaps we could do, before we all leave on vacation, a sort of hybrid where we do part of it in person for the parishioners who can, as we've joined here, we can do a bit of it in person and then do the rest of it online?
Yeah,
That's one
absolutely.
thing that I just in listening that I thought might be a good solution. You know, even having experienced a survey recently, you know, there was a 35% respondent totally online. So while we're here, let's, I think, take advantage of it. And then also the thing that I really wanted to discuss was the communication part. I think it's really important, and I think it's great that we're going to be aware of every stage of what is happening and things like that. Have you thought about putting in place a process where the congregation can give you feedback to the information you're giving us? And maybe that might be something helpful. That was my main point, so thanks.
The communication team certainly can put something like that in place. That's going to be their role, is to figure out what is the best way to communicate the information both to the parish but also to the applicants.
Yes. Yep.
And to get feedback and to make sure.
From the congregation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's certainly feedback that can be given to the communication team as they're organizing their way of communicating.
Part of why we want to have a dedicated team is exactly for that, which is that if we have a dedicated team on communication that plans on around strategy and feedback loops. So the idea is to not have it go too long where you're thinking, what's going on? And as part of that, it's what's going on that you have more of a fast time understanding and a fast time reactivity to then feed, oh, I don't understand this part, or why this, so that we can then react.
We've got Francie and then we've got Kate.
Yeah, I had one quick question from the email that you sent out. I think it was you, Anne. And in it, it says that the discernment team will do all this checking, host candidates, interview candidates, and then recommend finalists to the vestry and the bishops' committee. And I'd like to know what that bishops' committee is and what the role of the bishop will be in this process.
You don't have a bishops' committee.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that probably should have gotten deleted. A bishops' committee is what the vestry is called in a parish. If you're a mission church, it's called the bishops' committee.
Okay.
But you don't have one, because you're a parish.
Except for the Francophone mission. Thank you.
No, sorry for that confusion.
So up to Kate.
Actually, I just want to emphasize, because a lot of the questions are around the fact that we shut down in the summer. I worked at IBM Europe, Middle East, Africa, getting people to the Olympics, Summer Olympics in Atlanta.
Right.
And in America, they said, send out only so many invitations. Nobody answered. Or they either said no or nobody, because everyone was on holiday. In France, a lot of people have 6 weeks of holiday. Now, they don't take all of that in the summer, but I think Americans frequently don't realize that things shut down here.
Yep.
I would say July and August.
Yeah,
Anyway, that's all
yeah, we do. Yeah.
Emphasize, because a lot of the questions were sort of around that.
Yeah,
I remember
the
that from
vestry's,
last
yeah,
summer.
vestry's thinking about that as well in terms of, July 15th to end of August, things are much quieter, but, people do still look at their emails, as well. They may not be as reactive, for sure, even trying to take a break from email, but I think that in this day and age, we unfortunately still look at our emails.
Hi, thank you. I want to think more about hearing people's concern about summer vacation and just the response time is going to change because of that respite that is cultural here. How the prayer group or this idea of being prayerful about our search for a dean as a cathedral can be emphasized, or if there's something, even if people aren't members of this particular prayer group, if we can call each other to be prayerful about this search and maybe give this discernment more of our time and attention during this period, because it is so important. And if that call can be made now for people to say, can you be considering what you want in a dean, all this stuff, and maybe that communication team can put that forward now, so that we can call each other into this process and not check out necessarily the way we might in any other summer.
Yeah. So we are hoping that this whole process continues to remain prayerful. The teams themselves, and each team will have a convener. The convener is really the person who coordinates the specific team. So all of that, we hope, will be done by the end of May so that it can be announced at the latest on Pentecost Sunday. And that person who is the convener of the prayer team will have information as well from Linda on how to organize prayer teams, and I can turn it over to Linda to explain a bit more things that have happened in the past with other groups that she's leading. So.
Yeah, I mean, prayer teams have done many different things. You all are large enough, you might do what one other large church did, which is that there were certain people that were assigned to Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday, so every day had 5 or 6 people who particularly prayed on that day. The prayer team has someone or multiples at prayer whenever the discernment team meets. So while the discernment team is meeting, the prayer team is making sure that they are being upheld in prayer. And likewise, when the time comes for decisions to be made, I'm hoping that a large portion of the prayer team, when you all as vestry are making your discernment at the end, that they are holding you in prayer. But they've done a lot of other things. They've organized prayer vigils for members in the congregations to participate. I had one church, and I will give them a resource. There's 22 ways to pray, and they led workshops during the process for inviting people to learn different ways to pray as a way to get the congregation involved in supporting this process in prayer. And I personally push this a lot because I'm a firm believer that prayer does make a difference, that I think if we create a place for God to enter this process, that it becomes a divine process that actually is, who is God calling to be in ministry with you? And God's calling you to do a ministry, who is God calling? And that's really what we're trying to discern, not who's the best CEO to hire, but who is God calling to be in ministry with us?
We've got Melanie, and then Francie.
It's actually not me.
Anne.
To have questions in the Facebook feed.
Ah, okay.
You're our monitor.
Yep. So Kim,
Yes,
do
thank you.
you want to come get Melanie's question here, and then we'll have Del, who is trying to navigate the pages. He's got to
Thanks.
flip back and forth.
In talking to a lot of people, like maybe newer members in the 20s, 30s group, or like even newer Episcopalians, I was wondering if the parish or the church had resources available maybe to put out, because I've realized that maybe a lot of people don't realize why it's so important that they should participate in this, because they maybe don't realize even what the specific role of a dean is. versus a canon, and especially in our parish specifically, but even at large. So I was wondering if we have resources to put out right now, even before the teams assemble. Maybe the search for team members is over, but we could still maybe open the prayer team a little bit longer since it's unlimited, or have people, prepare for giving input by maybe just giving more info so that they understand how it would shape the future of the parish.
So do we have resources that we can give now that would help to explain what is the role of a dean, what is the role of a canon?
Almost glossary, educational material, and resources. That's what I hear a mix.
Right. I mean, but even maybe more than a glossary, just saying very specifically what happened here or what was done in previous years, what, very specifically would be the role of a
We
dean.
can certainly come up with that. I mean, if people would think that's helpful, there's no reason why we can't.
Yeah.
I can draft something, you all can edit it to fit your circumstance.
And see
Right, because
I'm gonna
I feel
go
like
get
the
my
people
hearing
that
aid.
have done this process several times or that have been here longer maybe don't even realize that newer members don't even have an idea that what the how that will impact them specifically and personally.
So I think we will take on that point. It also goes back to how we're trying to think through all the pieces on communication from different types of constituencies, so we can grab the widest part, and not just the cradle Episcopalians, but the wider part of our parish, so that we think through how to best enable understanding across the different types of stakeholders.
Yep.
But yeah, point noted.
And know that the 20s, 30s group is very important to us, and that has also come into our reflection in terms of who best represents the cathedral. It is the youth who are then going to be the people who are sitting in our pews for the 20 plus years that we have as well. So we're looking for people who are spreading all of the generations. We know that our parishioners who have been here and have that deep historical knowledge are just as important as the new person who walks through the door. We've got Peter, and then we've got maybe Del.
Just related to that question, are those 12 questions, essay questions, available online somewhere already?
Are the 12 essay questions that we would be answering and that the priest would be, the candidates answering, are they available online already?
They're not online, but I have them. I'm perfectly happy to share them at any point that the vestry says. I can give them to you all, and I think the more you get information out and the more opportunities, I'm already hearing, I'm going to tell your visioning committee, you need to do many different ways for people to give input so that it's not just one shot. That's clear. But we can get that out. They're standard questions. Same 12 everybody answers. Yeah. Well, one of the things that your communications team needs to do quickly probably is create a tab on your website that says Dean Search, and that's where those sorts of things go, so that everybody knows you want to find out what's happening, in this month, and also what are the different documents, and you can post everything you want there. So yeah, that's one thing I'm going to encourage you to do quickly, so we get some of that stuff up.
So we've
Questions? Yes.
Yep.
So are you ready for some questions? Okay, let's see. Ann Swartzen asks the question, where's the financial support for Linda coming from, and what will the bishop's role in this process be?
So the financial support for Linda, she is replacing Walter as a transitions officer. Her salary of what it is
travel costs.
Is just the travel cost for her to come to be with us. So there's not a great hit to the cathedral apart from round trip airfare. So, and the bishop's role is the traditional role in terms of making sure that he contacts the other bishops of the candidates. We do have through vestry, and that's something that Matt can take on, someone from the convocation who is going to help us.
Yeah, the only other role that could touch the bishop zone would be that on one of the teams, the visioning team, we as a vestry had a discussion about how to think through what would be the way to have gifts, skills, and experience around the idea of a representation on the convocation, and that we didn't feel that we necessarily had it without thinking through that broader perspective of where that could fit in for the way that we're looking at the future and that relationship to the convocation on behalf of the cathedral, since we are the cathedral of the convocation. So what we've decided to do is to see if Mark, that is the bishop, with the council of advice, can appoint one person that would be part of the visioning team. So that would be an indirect way to say the bishop's involvement, but not decision-making, more about representation of the convocation.
So the bishop has two responsibilities in this process. One is he will recruit people because he travels around everywhere, and if he sees good clergy, he's going to say to them, hey, the dean's position is open. If you're interested, put your application in. That doesn't impact the process any because the discernment team doesn't know or the vestry doesn't know. But he does that, bishops do that kind of recruiting. Frankly, I will do some of that recruiting as well because I do this work for the Diocese of Vermont. And shoot, if they have a good candidate that they're not hiring and I think it's a good fit here, I'm going to at least direct them to look at the description and see whether they'd be interested. The other role the bishop and I both have is doing our best to make sure that you don't end up with a dean that has problems. So we're looking at things like, do they have 3 DUIs in the last 2 years? Are they in the middle of a Title IV, which is the disciplinary process because they had an affair and their marriage is breaking apart? Are they someone who has, either absconded with money or who has been really encouraged a congregation to spend down their money? I mean, those are the things that the bishop and I are going to be looking for. We do not advocate for anybody, but we will certainly make both the discernment team and if it comes to the vestry aware of any problems that someone may have. Because both he and I will have access to that information that you all may, if you hear a rumor somewhere, I mean, if you know somebody who knows somebody, but usually the congregation doesn't get that information. It usually resides in the priest's diocesan office. So my counterpart or the bishop, when he calls what we call the bishop-to-bishop call, when he makes that call, that person's bishop may say, you probably don't want to touch this person with a 10-foot pole. So ours is more of a protective role in that respect.
Great. Del has maybe a follow-up question, and then we'll go up to...
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Del.
Turned it off. I wanted to get back on. Okay. From Nancy Janine.
Janelle, yep.
Jana, did the call for volunteers end already? I assume today's session was intended partly to help us discern how each of us might be useful so that we could volunteer appropriately. But I'm hearing that the process is over for volunteers. Is that process?
So we had a session on Friday night in which we had the member list plus volunteer list plus other people who might be very engaged in the life of the cathedral and the community. And we did do a discernment session in which we all individually went through the list. I think it was eight pages, some 400 names, included some friends on there as well. And we really discerned who, from a prayerful standpoint, who might just be someone who could rise up. I can tell you that there were people's names that came to me. I don't know them, but somehow their name came to me, and so I wrote them down and aligned them to a committee. After that, we all met as the vestry, and we looked at the various committees, and we started to put people in there that we thought would be a good mix of people, a very representative mix of who we are in the cathedral today, who we think, needs to carry us forward tomorrow. So, it is over in terms of taking people's requests to be on teams, but know that if you are a pledging member, if you are a volunteer, if you are someone who's active in the community, your name was on that list of the people that we reviewed and that came to us through prayer.
So you may be asked even if you didn't volunteer. And the other thing I wanted to say is the prayer team and the welcome teams in particular, I keep saying, I would be happy if the entire congregation signed up on the prayer team. So those teams can go out and recruit other people over time, because the prayer team's work will start immediately and can use as many of you all as are willing to be part of that. And the welcome team, when they kick into gear next spring, also can reach out, and there will be other opportunities for people to be involved.
Great. I think Laurence, did you have a question?
Yes. Yep.
And then we'll go back to Del.
Thank you, Linda. You mentioned twice clergy who might have problems. My question is, amongst the Episcopal clergy, how attractive would be a position in Paris?
How attractive?
Yes.
Yeah. How attractive would the position here in Paris be among the clergy that are out there?
You have the benefit of being Paris, come on. So one of the downsides, frankly, is you will get some people who will apply because you're in Paris, and they don't care who you are or what you're looking for. You're in Paris, so they want to be in Paris. So beyond that, I think you will be very attractive, frankly, because your finances are reasonably stable, you've got a good-sized congregation, you don't have any major Yahoo stuff going on.
Thankfully.
So, and there aren't that many churches, most of our churches, to be blunt, are in pretty serious financial straits. So that's an advantage that you have, is that your finances are in reasonably good shape. It is a clergy shortage, though. Del, you had another question online?
Yes.
Just a second.
Or Francine's got it.
Technical difficulty.
Yes. Question for the wardens. The last 2 dean searches, and probably the last 10, have been conducted by the vestry. Why does this vestry not feel competent to run this one?
I would say that it's not a question of competence. We certainly feel competent. 5 of us who sit on the vestry presently recruited Nat. And if anyone says that he's a bad recruit, you can talk to the 5 of us that did that. It was very challenging in terms of time. Also trying to run the cathedral from a statutory standpoint. We also are working with the interim dean to put a lot of processes and procedures in place that have not been in place. So we are extremely busy. And one of the things that Linda and her colleagues have found is that a vestry running a search can run themselves into the ground and then run themselves, as she said at the start of this, which you may have missed, run themselves completely away from the church, and we don't want that for anyone. We also want to have more minds than just 15 people engaged in the search process.
I would just say that the question suggests that the vestry is not doing its duty. Our feeling is that we are doing our duty. We're organizing it maybe in not the exact same way as the past, but we are very much engaged in the process. We're looking at how to structure it in a way that reflects the variety and richness of the parish and the skills that come from the members and the stakeholders, and in a hybrid system as well, including the Friends as well as online. So we're very cognizant of our duty and making sure that we do the right way, and what we think is an organizational structure that reflects what we can do now in a more modern context.
I would also add, I've been doing this for a decade. I've done over 20 searches, as I was canon to the ordinary in the Diocese of Rhode Island. I did all of those searches. I've never had a vestry do a search. That's very uncommon in the Episcopal Church. What we did do before is we had what we called a search and profile team, and we made that one group do all the work I just described to you. They did the communications, they did the survey, the visioning, the interviews, the prayer team. I mean, they did it all, and we burned those people out. And that's why moving into multiple teams so that you engage a larger portion of the congregation. But it would be unusual for a vestry, especially of a congregation of this size. It would be very unusual for a vestry to do a search.
Melanie has a question. And if you can hold the mic, Melanie, right to your mask.
You keep talking about the clergy shortage, and I was wondering if there is a possibility, which would be uncomfortable, but at the same time would maybe make me feel better, but is there a possibility that if the right candidate doesn't come along, and even after the 3 or 2 are met with, and it turns out that it doesn't fit for some reason, could it be extended another year if we need it? Is that, planned for, just as a contingency plan?
That's a plan B we hope not to get into.
Right,
yes,
right.
Yes, absolutely. We are not
to have someone to have someone.
No, we're not going to call someone just because we have a space to fill. We're going to call the right person that, the discernment team, the vestry, the Bishop and Linda, in terms of their calling, that we feel is a fit for us and can lead us to the future. So, if we have to, we will engage in another search for an interim dean, or we will round up the various clergy who might be free and can come, for weeks at a time and help us get through until we find the right person.
That does happen.
So I think, Del, anything else online? Nope. Oh, Francie. Yeah, maybe.
So I'll say one other thing about the clergy shortage. I want on one hand say there is a clergy shortage and I want us to all to recruit. On the other hand, I think you all will comfortably you had like 40 applicants for a canon's position.
Yes.
You had about 20 for the interim dean's position, which was a very short time frame, and it's interim, so you always have less. There's hardly any interims out there. And I would expect that you would get 60 to 80 applicants, so it's not like we're picking out of a tiny pool. I think you will be fine. It's just we do need to do a little bit more marketing of the position than before. Before you could just post it and automatically know you'll get 100 or 150 applicants. When I was looking for jobs, every job I applied to had 150 applicants. It was like, because we had a clergy oversupply in those days. Francie, you've got I think we don't have.
Okay.
You got them all?
Any other questions? Nicola. Kim, right up here.
It's not so much of a question, but it's actually just to share a word. So Guillaume, my husband, and myself, we have roots in the Roman Catholic Church in France, and it's just outstanding for us to be here today and to see this whole process and how things go. And I think we're really, really impressed. So I would honestly, I know we're just at the start, but thank you so much for all the efforts you're putting into this. And it feels very reassuring too, I think, Linda, everything you've told us about the position being somewhat attractive, Paris, City of Lights, but also having your expertise. You said you've been doing this for years now, so it feels somehow after this meeting that we go with good hope, I think, and I would like to thank you very much for this. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Nicola. Any other questions?
Just as a response,
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. I just want to thank everyone for the questions and helping us continue to make sure we think through the sensitive areas that the different parts of the parish feel. Will it be social justice? Will it be about the role of the vestry in the process. It's really helpful to continue to have this conversation. So we thank you for that.
And I guess the other thing I would add to that is, as your consultant, as I get feedback in and I hear this has been very helpful to me, I will help your teams figure out how to adapt. And if something isn't working, we'll figure out something else. I mean, this is not a cookie cutter process. Every time I've done it, we nudged it a little bit here and a little bit there. And I've gotten to be fairly good at reading what's going on in a congregation. And I'll help them adjust. So it doesn't have to all be locked down. We'll respond as we hear, and I'll get your teams to listen as well and adapt. As I said, I'm already aware that the visioning team has got to do multiple input times and ways, and we need to add different ways for people to give input into this process. So we'll do that.
Francie.
Francie.
Kim, do you want to put the microphone to Francie?
Yeah, take the mic. Especially for our online friends.
Yeah, it's true. I just think that it's going to be really critical to have as much transparency and as much communication about this process as possible.
Absolutely.
And I feel that even between the email that went out and today, as Nancy Janin's question reflects, there's confusion. And people don't understand the process, they don't understand how to participate. And so, you know, I think it's a little bit too bad that we didn't have this session. I think it's very much too bad that we didn't have this session prior to that email going out and prior to asking people to volunteer.
Yeah. One of the things I always say to the communication team is your job is to over-communicate. To communicate to the point where you guys are starting to say, we've already heard that 6 times. But you have to repeat stuff because some people hear it one time and some people don't hear it until 3 times later. So you have to keep doing that.
So, and I was just going to close with saying that I retain a couple of very key points. One of those is communication. Another one of those is, you know, the timing, the summer break, making sure that we can include everyone, that we remain an inclusive congregation, both from our span of who we are, but also where we are, here and online, because we really have, almost thanks to COVID, unfortunately with COVID, we have developed a community that expands the globe, and we really are very fortunate to have that, to have those inputs as well of people who are able to sit at home, able to sit wherever they are, send us messages, and also receive the Holy Spirit, you know, through their screens.
And we're fortunate that we've all become Zoom easy. I mean, we can do stuff on Zoom that we couldn't have done 3 years ago. This process has changed a lot in the decade I've worked with it, but a lot even in the last 2 years because of the Zoom capacity.
And we ended up recruiting Canon Nats during the COVID period, and so we, as the vestry members who recruited Canon Nats, became very, very efficient on Zoom as well. So we know that it is possible to recruit a high-quality priest through Zoom, sitting here in Paris and listening to sermons wherever they are in the world, you know, and seeing who really speaks to us and who speaks to the cathedral. So, do you want to close with a prayer, Linda?
Sure. I was going to suggest that.
If there are no other questions.
Heard? Yes? No? Good. Why don't we stand and pray? Holy God, we give you thanks for this community gathered in this place. We give you thanks for the mission that you have charged them to do on your behalf. We thank you for your presence in their midst. We ask you now to give your Holy Spirit to this congregation as they move into the search process. Guide them, lead them, support them, keep them from being overly anxious. Assure them that you are walking with them. And we pray also for all the candidates that we know are going to be applying, that you would guide them and that you would bring to this congregation the priests that you have chosen, the priests that you are calling into this ministry. So we ask that you would bless all of us, that we may be your servants and do the ministry that you have given to each of us, that your will may be done. All this we pray in the name of Jesus. Amen. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.
Thank you so much.
I have this cute gizmo.